Thank you again for watching, guys. Today we have Mr. Rob Walters.
Right. Thank you.
Did I say it right?
You got it right, Walters, yes.
The best kept secret in Yonkers. If somebody knows about the history of Yonkers, this is the man.
Well, I think it's important to know your history. So it's, when I first came to Yonkers, actually back in the late 60s, I had grown up in Upper Manhattan and Inwood, and Inwood had an amazing history. But Yonkers, as I learned over the years, was even more interesting. So the person I like to talk about is Adrian van der Dak. And most Yonkers residents call him the Jakker, the Jakker, the Dutch for gentleman. And you ask people about that, that's, a fairly well-known fact. But Adrian van der Dak was in many ways, a father of America. Because when he came from the Netherlands, he was New Amsterdam's first lawyer. He had been educated as a lawyer in Leiden in the Netherlands. So he came and he landed in New Amsterdam. There was only 1,500 people down there. So it was a small settlement. So he wound up going up to Albany, and I love this part of his story. He was appointed the sheriff, and he worked for Van Cortlandt up there, and his job was to collect the rents from the tenant farmers.
Was that easy?
He couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. He wasn't the kind of guy that was a collector. He was more of a person that he wanted, he enjoyed people, he enjoyed their freedom. So, but the good thing, when he was up there for 2 years, he learned the language of the native people. So he became an advocate for the natives. And when he came back down, he moved back into New Amsterdam. And by this time, Peter Stuyvesant had arrived. And Peter Stuyvesant was I hate to call him a bureaucrat, but he was a soldier. He was the gentleman with the wooden leg. He lost his leg in a battle down in the Caribbean islands. And so he would stump around on his leg. And Adrian was a free spirit, so he's running around. He's the first guy to use the word Americans. Because he looked around that colony of 1,500 people, and they literally were from all over the world. Indians, the Dutch, the English, people from South America, and they were America's first capitalists. They were here to make a buck. And so Adrian came up with the idea. He said, these people, they're the Americans. They're here to stay. And he said they should have the right to vote. So if you're running a military operation, Peter Stuyvesant he was like the military governor. The idea of people having the right to vote in New Amsterdam, he didn't like that.
I bet.
So what did he do with our friend Adrian? He throws him in jail. So, but there was such an outcry, right, that Adrian was still soon released. And but ever since that time, Peter Stuyvesant and Adrian van der Dak knocked heads. And so there was a committee formed down there, and the committee was advocating for people to have the right to vote. So Adrian travels back to the Netherlands. He appeals his case before the Court of Hague. And guess what? He wins. He wins. He wins the case that the people in New Amsterdam should have the right to vote. And so he starts coming back to America. And guess what happens? The English and Dutch go to war. So the Dutch are saying, we don't want people having the right to vote when we're at war. We want Peter Stuyvesant to be strong. So Adrian's idea about the right to vote was thrown out the window. So soon enough, the British fleet arrived in New Amsterdam. If you can imagine the battery, right? A lot of people know the battery, and the fort was there, and the British fleet comes in, and they're lined up, all these warships with their guns pointed to New Amsterdam. So Adrian, the general, he wants to fight. So he goes down to the fort. The only person that followed him was the fellow that was in charge of firing the cannon. And they primed the cannon, and they were there with the lit match to fire the cannon, and all the merchants went down. Even his own son went down, and they pulled at him. They said, "You can't fire that cannon, because the law of the day is once a shot was fired,
The war starts.
the war starts," and they would have leveled the town. So the Dutch were pragmatic. You know, they pulled Peter down from the rampart, and New Amsterdam became an English colony. And Peter Stuyvesant, you go around downtown, there's a lot of things named after Peter Stuyvesant. You know, Stuyvesant Town, but he didn't go back to the Netherlands. He stayed. So in many ways, I talk as Peter Stuyvesant as one of the first Americans.
One of the first Americans. But Bob, you have done many things. The latest one is Amistad.
Yeah.
Somebody's lost, our gain.
Yeah, I know.
Tell us the story behind the Amistad. What did you have to do to get it here? Because a lot of people, I think the majority are very happy with that experience.
Yes. No, I think, yeah.
But you know, we see the boat here, the ship here, but we have no idea of the work that it took to get that ship.
Yeah. Well, I've been involved with a lot of projects in Yonkers over the years, and you know, I always say that luck is opportunity recognized. You know, luck is opportunity recognized. So I'm involved with the river, and John Bargo from Boating on Hudson, and he called me up and he said, La Amistad is supposed to go into Peekskill, but they don't have enough water in Peekskill. The boat draws 10 feet, they only had 8 feet. So in Yonkers, our pier, a wonderful pier that dates back to 1900, has 18 feet. 18 feet of water. We can get amazing ships into the Yonkers waterfront. So I called up La Amistad, and I talked to their acting director and their Captain Whitty, and they said they would love to come to Yonkers because they're rebuilding their organization, and the ship looks beautiful. I was at its launch, you know, Pete Seeger and a bunch of people from the Hudson River Valley went to the launch up in Mystic Seaport, and that's, I guess it's about 20 years ago. So I had a personal connection to that ship. So it was interesting that we went through the permits and stuff, and I began talking to people in the African community because I wanted to make sure that they were aware of it, and I wanted them to support it. So the first person I talked to was Vinnie Bagwell, the sculptor, and she's got the African rain garden sculptures that, you know, yes. Yonkers has a tie to, you know, slavery. And so Vinnie became a big supporter, and the committee, the 400 committee became a supporter. And Gail Baxter, Gail's a very strong woman, and, and she's an advocate. So Gail got involved in a bunch of other people. So it happened, and you know, I think it was a great visit. For me, you know, to put my feet on the deck of the Amistad, you know, that was an important thing. You know, it's an important part of our history in America. So I would think that a lot of the other people that came aboard and sat on that boat.
Yeah. Just before we go any further, let me make it clear, okay, that all those people that worked to bring the boat here, but that would not be possible without the help of the City of Yonkers, correct?
That's correct.
So, also thanks to the City of Yonkers, the city, you know, the Mayor Spano's administration,
yeah, definitely,
for making that possible. I know that they worked very hard. In the beginning, there were some, you know, legalities, you know, insurance and whatever, you know, it's involved. But at the end of the day, they made it happen.
Yes, they made it happen. And I have to express thanks to Jim Kavanaugh, the deputy mayor, because he really stepped up to the plate. He was actually in Ireland, you know, so we were texting back and forth.
Okay.
And he, you know, in nautical terms, you call it greasing the waves, that you made the ship slide down. Yeah. So, and the Mayor Spano definitely.
I spoke with Christina Gilmartin.
Yes.
About it, And she said, Rue, let me make it clear that we want this to happen.
Yes.
And we are going to do whatever we can to make this happen.
Yes.
So, and they did it.
Yeah, no,
And she called me up and said, the city gives the green light, this is on.
Yes.
And the response was amazing.
Yeah, it was very exciting. You know, it's being that this is, I think, the 400th anniversary of slavery in America. That was a powerful link to this history. And the Amistad history, as I learned, is even such a fascinating story that, and we talk about, yes.
Well, just before we go into the story of the Amistad, let me just make, so people understand from the beginning, because some people are a little bit confused. L'Amistad was not a slave ship. L'Amistad was a cargo ship.
That's correct.
Okay? L'Amistad was not used to bring ships from whatever places into United States. It was used to transport cargo, and the slaves were seen as cargo.
Yes.
So the ship transported cargo from one place into another.
Yes.
Am I correct,
That's
Bob?
correct. Yeah, the Amistad was a coastal schooner.
Exactly.
She wasn't designed really to sail the oceans. So she was a Cuban vessel.
Okay.
And the slaves, Cinque and from Sierra Leone, and I learned so much from the visit of the Amistad. So the slaves that came over were mostly from Sierra Leone, and so they wound up in Cuba, and they were bought. They were ruled as captives. That was a key thing in their trial.
As a captives, not as slaves, correct?
They were not slaves, So it's and slavery was legal in Cuba, and but the twist that made the story work when they finally went to trial all the way up to the Supreme Court was that it was legal to have slavery in Cuba, but the way it was presented is that they were slaves already in Cuba. They were never slaves in Cuba. They were from Africa, and so their rebellion on the ship for their freedom, that was perfectly legal. Anybody is supposed to have the right to struggle to be free. So it was an amazing story. The one thing that I love about the Amistad story is the language problem.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I heard the story. Yes.
Yeah. So the language of the people from Sierra Leone was a particular African dialect, Mende. So to find somebody in America that spoke Mende was almost impossible. But then the Yale linguists, when they were up in jail, the Yale linguists had the Africans teach them 1 to 10 in Mende. And then he went on the waterfront in New York and yelled out in Mende, 1 to 10. Ooh. And they thought this professor was nuts, right? What is this guy yelling out in this foreign language? And finally, a person came up, a British ship, and he said, "What are you speaking my language for?" And they had the interpreter.
That was it.
And the captives could finally tell their story.
Now, we cannot go through the whole story because we don't have many hours.
Yes.
But this is a fascinating story. And there is a movie out there that can educate you, L'Amistad.
Yes.
I'm not sure if it's on Netflix, but it is on Apple Movies.
Yes.
Watch it. It's amazing. Now, let's just fast forward to the end of the movie.
Yes.
They went back.
Yes, they did. They
Okay.
They went back to their homeland.
Every one of them, did anyone chose to stay in the States?
No. It was actually, there was originally 53, right? 53, and I think there were 37. Some died, in the trip. Some died in the rebellion. So the group that went back, they went back, and of course their country had changed. When Cinque went back to his village had been destroyed, and his wife and kids had been stolen. So, but the one interesting thing was one of the young women was such a, she was a star in the group. I don't know how old she was. She was a teenager. She came back to America and she went to Oberlin College.
Is that true?
Right.
Or so after she went to Sierra Leone, she came back to the States.
And she went to Oberlin College, and then she went back to Sierra Leone, and she helped run the mission there.
Wow.
So that was an amazing story. So it's yeah, it's, to me, it's a very powerful story because it's a story of freedom, and I don't think there's enough examples in our history. You know, of course, our own American Revolutionary is a story of freedom. But
now, not far away from the pier, we had some slave owners in Yonkers, right?
yeah, that was
Not far from that ship that was docked here the other day.
Yeah, no, it's the Phillipses who owns the house up the block.
Right.
You know, the Phillips family, they were very much slave owners, and to me, they weren't only slave owners; they were slave sellers. So they were Dutch businessmen, and a lot of the economy of the farms in Yonkers and Sleepy Hollow were based on a slave economy. So Frederick Phillips, I get confused with there were 3 generations. He actually sent his son over the Madagascar, which was a pirate port, but it was also a place to buy and sell slaves.
Mm-hmm.
So they brought slaves back on the ship, you know, to New York and Yonkers. So it's you know, in a way, that's why the Phillipses, they're part of Yonkers history, but they're not my favorite. You know, I prefer Adrian Vanderdock, who was you know, a first American talking about freedom.
But you know, Bob, sometimes we have our preferences, but even those that are not our preferences, they are part of the history.
Yes.
Okay. So if you live in a city, whatever that city is, you know, it could be Yonkers, could be whatever.
Yes.
Learn the history.
Yes.
It's fascinating.
Absolutely.
Okay, it's fascinating. And today we don't have much time to address many stories, but I am going to invite Bob to once in a while, at your choice,
Yes.
whatever time you feel like it, and we're going to pick one story
Yes.
that connects to our city and talk about that.
Yes. That would be wonderful.
The Phillips, the Van Cortlands,
Yes.
whatever, or perhaps the Civil War, because the church right here in Gary Square, it's directly connected to the Civil War,
Yes.
right? So we're going to pick on one subject.
Right. But if I could add just 2 thoughts.
Oh, please,
Yeah,
2,
so-
3, whatever.
Yeah,
We're not rushing.
So it's the first slaves that were freed in New York State actually happened right up the block. You know, in 1781. You know, with the Amistad, we're up in 1839. But 1781 at Phillips Manor Hall, the Phillipses sided with the British. And as we know, you know, the American Revolution, you know, the Continentals won, George Washington won, so all that property became the property of New York State. And New York State looked at the slaves that the Phillipses owned, and they said they have the right to be free. So, you know, a lot of the sculptures that Vinnie Bagwell makes, they were actually freed Africans.
Yes.
So then the other interesting thing, and I think it speaks well to Yonkers, and I encourage everybody to stop by, and we have that giant, you know, Civil War memorial, and it was built in 1891. It was contributions from all the people in Yonkers. It depicts the soldiers and sailors that fought in the Civil War from Yonkers, and this thing that faces the street that jumps at you is slavery abolished. So we were very proud in Yonkers that, you know, we were part of the fight to abolish slavery.
Amazing, amazing. So, Rob Walters, a fountain. He's the best kept jewel when it comes to history of Yonkers. There is another guest that we tried to get in here. You probably know her, Angelique
Pawinski, yes.
She's also a jewel.
She's a Yonkers historian.
Yes, as a Yonkers historian, her and Bob, I think they would both be able to tell you everything there is to know about Yonkers.
You have to add one more.
Who?
Mary Hoare.
I don't know her.
Mary is an amazing woman. She's a former president of the Yonkers Historical Society.
Okay.
And it's great. She's amazing like you. Every week she puts
like me.
She puts a column out about Yonkers history.
So I need to get in touch with
You
her.
have to sit down and talk to Mary.
Yeah.
Because you know who my fact checker is?
Who is it?
Mary Hoare.
Oh, is that right?
So it's she's just a great person, you know. And Angelique, of course.
Yes, Angelique is amazing.
Yes.
You know, I've been trying to get our schedules together. You know, Angelique kind of,
Yes.
she retired.
Yes.
She moved out of Yonkers, so it's been a little bit difficult because we just don't synchronize our calendars. But sooner or later she will come and she
Yes.
will talk to us. It's not for me that I'm not inviting her to our show because I wanted to know, even though I do, but because I think that the people of Yonkers need to know the history of Yonkers.
Yes.
Knowledge is power.
Yes. Absolutely.
Knowledge is power. On that note, thank you, Bob. And Bob, please let me know when can we sit again. We're going to pick up one subject.
Yes.
And perhaps, you know, we do like in episodes. Okay, this show will be about this one, the next show will be at that one, and we evolve around the subject and transfer knowledge.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Because Bob knows a lot about our city, but Bob needs to share that knowledge with the others.
Yes.
So we can pass it on.
Absolutely.
So, thank you,
No,
Bob.
no, thank you, Ruth,
No.
for having me.
Bob, is there anything else that you wanna, any special portion that you wanna talk about? That
No, it's you know, I retired from the science board from Groundwork Hudson Valley, so you know I started. I'm working with John Bargo with the magazine Boating on the Hudson,
mhm.
and then I'm working with Mr. Zampino, another friend, on a business called Hudson River Adventures. So if you want to go on a yacht charter from any number of people from 6 to 600, we can depart from the Yonkers Pier, and we could do fall trips with the Palisades, or you know, the main thing is to get people out on the river.
You know, actually, I'm going to talk to you about this offline.
Yes.
Because we're trying to get something together for Yonkers Voice friends. Now, maybe we get together and we all go on a trip and learn about Yonkers, go on the river.
Oh yeah, that would be
and
great.
Do something like that for the.
Yeah. So
for
it's
the-
yeah.
So we will talk about that offline.
That's very good.
So guys, thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Robert Walters, an historian, fountain of knowledge about the history of our city. Get to know Yonkers. Thank you.
Thank you.